So, my name is Agnes Molnar. I'm from Hungary. I live there, but I've been working around the world, literally. So, I've been working on international projects mostly in the last couple of years. I work as an independent consultant. I have more than 10 years experience with SharePoint, mostly on enterprise content management and search. I've been a SharePoint server MVP for 6 years now. And I have a blog. You can see the URL down here. Don't worry, you don't have to know Hungarian for being able to read it. It's all in English. So I promise, I speak English. I don't expect you to speak Hungarian, but if you do, just let me know. I met at least one guy at this conference this morning who speaks Hungarian, although he doesn't live in Hungary, so it was a big surprise for me. So today I am going to talk about challenges because search, enterprise search is full with challenges. Every project I'm involved in is a new challenge, even for me, because I learn more and more during those projects, and I would like to share with you my experiences, and I would like to share those challenges to make you available to get prepared, or at least get better prepared for those challenges. But what kind of challenges they are? Because, you know, search is complex, although it seems to be very simple. I'm just going to Google, I'm just going to Bing, enter my query and get the answers. It's simple, right? At least it seems to be simple. But if we go behind the scenes, if we would like to build up something similar in our enterprise, it's not that easy as it sounds and seems to be. So first of all, we have to collect our requirements. And this is the very first challenge, because because usually in those requirements there is you cannot find the word search. You can find something different. You can find some other business requirements or business pain points, but the goal is not searching. The goal is finding. It's a big difference. The next one is we have to plan for implementation. So we have to be able to figure out what's the best for our company, what are the best solutions, do we need SharePoint, do we need something else, is SharePoint 2010 enough, or we need fast search for SharePoint, or we need SharePoint 2013, or if we have some other solution, should we change it, or we can live with that. So the question is how to implement this new search solution, and what solution we really need that will fulfill our requirements collected before. The next big question in search is security, at least in enterprise search. So you have to deal with security. I will show you some surprises I have seen in my project so far. And sometimes it seems to be funny, but if you are that customer, it's not that funny, I bet. The next big question I will discuss this afternoon is crawl versus federate. So if we would like to crawl and index the content, or we would like to federate the results coming from a remote location, we will discuss the pros and cons for both. And finally, I will talk about the sizing and capacity planning, because again, search seems to be easy. It seems to be a kind of next finish, but when it goes to real world, you have to deal with the capacity, you have to deal with the performance. If you have millions of documents, if you have maybe even more, you have to work with that. So if a full crawl takes 1 month for your environment, performance is a big deal. And it's not It's not an uncommon scenario when a full crawl takes weeks. It's pretty often. So, first of all, what is enterprise search all about? Because we have search everywhere. You can go to Google, you can go to Bing, you can go to Expedia, Amazon. There are a lot of internet sites where you can find search functionality. And of course, you can have search in your business, and this is a very, very different search. Why? Because you have to deal with the security, because you have to deal with the content, you have to deal with the users, etc., etc. So if I had to put it into one sentence, I would say enterprise search is the search technology when you do have ownership and control over. So you have the power in your hands to build it up and to change it. You have the power to make it better. But search can be dangerous. I mean, I will show you some examples, especially when I'm talking about security. But you do have the control over it. But if you are not careful enough, if you don't know what you do, it can be dangerous. So I would say search is something like this fire in the hands of this guy. It's nice, it's powerful, you need that, we need that, but it might be dangerous, so you have to know what you do with search. And you also have to know that search is much more than technology. So you can say, all right, I do have fast search for SharePoint. Do I have search? It's not enough. Search is much more than owning the technology. If you install fast search for SharePoint, or if you install SharePoint 2013, it's a very good beginning. Even if you create your search service application, it's a very good beginning. If you create your search center, it's nice. But it's still not enough. It's not about technology. Search is about your business. We have to improve your business. We have to improve how the users can find something. And we have to shorten the time they can find something. And we have to improve the percentages of being able to find the content they are looking for. So basically, this is a very simple picture about search. On the left side, you can see the end users who are searching for something. And on the right side, you can see the creators who create some content, and between them, there is a search solution, something. It can be SharePoint, or it can be something else. But search always helps the users to make their everyday work easier and faster, to be able to find the content easier, to be able to find the content faster, and of course, for the company, if they can be faster and if they can be better in finding the content, that makes money for the company. So it's always a big question what kind of search solution you need, and it's not only about the technology, but it's about the solution itself. So it's about the business requirements mostly. You can find something like this, but this is not the goal, obviously. So if you just walk around, if you just navigate back and forth in your file shares, for example, you can find what you are looking for, or you can find something that you are not looking for right now but might be useful for you. But obviously, this is not the goal of search. But what's the goal? What about the requirements? So how we can identify what we need and what the business need in our case. I have mentioned to you that usually search is not the goal. Searching is nice, we can search. We usually say, oh, we have a search solution. That's nice, but what can you find with that? Because if you cannot find the useful content with it, search is useless. So first of all, you have to be able to find your content. You have to be able to find the content you are looking for, exactly that one that you are looking for. If you find something else, that's not good enough. So usually search is about to find the only one or a small set of the contents. I have been working on several projects where we created a content source with 10 millions of documents and improved the quality of the queries. We did some query transformations and those kind of things, but it was still not good enough. Why? Because the usual search user interface, when you enter your query, you get the results, like 10 or maybe 20 results, and you have to turn the pages over and over. If you find the result, that the only one result that you are looking for on the 10th page, it's not good enough for you, because you have to look through tens and or maybe hundreds of results until you find that one. So we have to identify the criteria how to sort those results. Maybe you have some property that is very important in your environment. For example, title is usually important. So this is in the out-of-the-box ranking method. But maybe project ID or customer name or your product name or any of your properties might be very, very important. So you have to change the default ranking profile for this solution and say, all right, if this query term can be found in this and that property, just boost this up. And you have to test it, of course, because it's no way to create the correct ranking profile immediately like this. So you have to plan for it and you have to test it until it's good enough for you, until you get the results on the top of the result set and not on the 10th page. The next requirement, besides finding the information, is collecting a set of information. So sometimes we are not looking for one proper document. Sometimes we are not looking for one PowerPoint presentation or one slide of one presentation, but sometimes we are looking for a set of results. For example, I would like to get the invoices that are already expired. This is not one invoice, this is a set of invoices. Can I describe the criteria? Yes, I can. They are invoices, they are expired, right? What does it mean they are expired? Each invoice has a date, and we passed the date already. So sometimes we have to collect them. Sometimes one is not enough. If we have to collect them, the big question is how to represent them, how to display them. Maybe I have only 2 invoices that are expired. That's good. I mean, that's good for my business, and that's good for the user who is looking for those invoices, because he or she can look through 2 invoices pretty easily. But if you do have a big business with a couple of invoices or maybe hundreds of invoices that you are getting as a result, well, you will have hundreds of invoices in the result set, and each of them are invoices, and each of them is expired. All right, so you have to collect them, and the big question, how to represent them. Do you want to display a grid, a table? Do you want to display in some groups them, like group by customers, group by countries, group by anything? Or just would you like to display them on a chart, or would you like to export that into Excel file? So we have to collect a lot of things, and you have to plan for this collection too. You have to display them in a different way when you are looking for something, a simple result set. The next thing that we might require is some kind of analysis on the results. when I just don't want to display the results only, but I would like to do some charts, I would like to do some calculations. What is the average number of expired invoices every month? Who are the customers who are always been late with paying the invoices? How many customers I do have who pays by the date and not missing any deadline at any time? Who are the best customers? Who are the best salesmen? Etc. etc. So we have to collect those information, and it's a kind of business intelligence, but this kind of business intelligence can be based on search, because you might have different content sources, you might have your information spread around your systems, and search is a good way. Search is a good way to collect them, and if you collect those information, you can analyze them. You can create dashboards, you can export those results, you can do anything. And this is the next question: what actions do I want to take on the results? If I would like to be able to export the results, if I would like to be able to display them on a diagram, maybe I would like to take actions on a set of results with one click, like declare them as records, select some of the results and declare them as records immediately. Or I would like to be able to start a workflow, I would like to be able to send them to a different system, I would like to be able to send them to my manager, etc., etc. So you have to collect those kind of actions too, right? And if you are done with those collections, we are still on the business level, so we still don't know how to implement them, just we know what we would like to do with our search solution. So you might say, all right, I would like to collect the invoices that are expired. I would like to be able to export them and send some email to the finance or something like that. So those are all business requirements only. The next type of requirements, and it's still technology independent, is the behavior of the users. How they do search, or how they are expected to do search with the help of this solution. The first one is pretty obvious. I know what I'm looking for, and I know how to do that. This is obvious. When I'm looking for some accommodation for my vacation, I'm going to Expedia, I'm looking for the place, I'm looking for the dates. Maybe I'm flexible with the dates so I can check for it. I'm going with my family, so I'm looking for a 4-star hotel for 2 kids and 2 adults, etc., etc. So I know how I will find the hotel that I'm looking for. In the business, if you do have a nice search solution and a good enough search solution, you might have the same. And if you train your users to use the search and how to use the search, they might have the very same experience. They know if they have to look for something, they have to go to this and that search center, and they will get this experience, and they will get the results. Okay? The next one is, of course, the second one is still pretty common, but of course this is not the goal. I know what I'm searching for, but I don't know how to find that. So what does it mean? I know I am looking for my company's results from the last year. Maybe I know that we had some nice PowerPoint presentation about it a couple of months ago, but I have no clue how to find it. Maybe we don't have a search solution. I don't know the colleague I have to go to ask for this content, etc., etc. Remember, finding is not always about searching. Can you remember the picture at the beginning of my presentation? That means if you would like to find something, maybe you go to search for that. Maybe you will use the navigation. You know how and where to find that. So maybe you know, okay, I have to go to this site, to this document library, and I will find the document there. This is finding too. And if you can train the users for that, if you have a good information architecture, it might improve your search and find experience too. But if I don't know how to find the content, I'm lost. If I don't know who to ask, if I don't know where I can find a search center, if I don't know how to do that, I'm lost. And so does my company. The next one is a bit surprising. I don't know what I'm searching for. I know I should find something, but I don't really know what's that. For example, when I was preparing to this presentation, I was looking for some nice pictures. You have seen some of them, and you will see some more of them at the beginning of each topic I'm talking about. I knew I was looking for some picture, but I couldn't express, yes, I'm looking for a man with a nice camera and a squirrel who's just looking into the camera, right? So sometimes you don't really know. When you prepare a presentation, when you would like to show something to your managers, for example, that you would like to make them happy, but you don't know what to present to them, that's the very same situation. And sometimes you have to write about something, you have to present about something, you have to collect some information, but sometimes you don't know how to begin that. And I do have one more surprising scenario when you don't even know that you are searching. Are you laughing? Are you surprised? Imagine that. You are working in a call center. I know you are not working in a call center, but imagine that. You are getting calls, hundreds every day. And those calls are, hey, I'm Agnes Molnar from Hungary. My customer ID is 12345. You are entering this customer ID 12345. You are getting my invoicing information, my everything about me. That might be a search-based application that collects information for you about me or about your customers from the different systems. Technically, you might use the search engine, but still you don't have to know about it, that you are using search. You are using the call center application in this case. So those kind of search-based applications provide the experience to the end users that, hey, I'm just doing my everyday job. But technically, they're using search. And it's a very common scenario. And when you ask them, those users, hey, what are you doing? They will tell you their everyday work, their business problems they solve. They won't tell you anything about search. Nothing. So this is very common too. All right, so let's go to a bit more practical. So what kind of requirements we do have and what kind of requirements we have to collect. We have to collect the content sources. It sounds obvious. We would like to crawl. We would like to be able to find the information in our SharePoint content, in our file shares, in our databases, in our SAP or Exchange or anything, or Lotus Notes databases. Those are the content sources. But from business perspective, they will be the content your users would like to be able to find. The next thing is the type of the content. Do I have the Office documents only? Or do I have PDF files, emails, records, or just documents? But those are not about file types only. Those are kind of content types, even if we don't call them content types in the content source. For example, imagine a huge file share when you store millions of documents. They might have scanned invoices. They might have system requirement documentation. They might have user manuals. They might have product documentation, right? So those are the content types. And I bet you would like to display the invoices in a different way than you display the system requirement documentation. Why? Because they have different properties, they have different templates, they have a lot of different, they might have different behavior. You might have different actions to take on them. You might have different workflows on them. You would like to take from your search solution, etc., etc. So you have to collect not the file types only, but the content types too. And as I have mentioned, you have to collect the actions you would like to take on those content pieces. You would like to start a workflow. You would like to be able to export the results. You would like to declare them as records. You would like to send them by email. You would like to zip them and send and save somewhere else, etc., etc. You would like to redirect them. So you would like to tag them. For example, sometimes it's very useful when you can change the properties of those documents with one click. So for example, you are collecting the invoices that are expired by more than 2 months. You can flag them to email or to mail that customer, like, hey, you should pay your invoice now. And you can flag those documents with one click with the help of search. It's also important to collect the metadata you have on those content sources, but it's very important that you don't have to collect the metadata one by one for each content source. You have to collect your metadata as a big search solution, as a system. For example, imagine that you have different kinds of content sources: SharePoint, Exchange, emails, file shares. You might have some other document management system like Documentum or Finet. You might have SAP, etc., etc. Each of them has a property that means the person who has created on that document, right? This property is called created by in SharePoint. In case of file share, we call this property author. In case of emails, this property is from. In other systems, it might be called owner, creator. The very same property with the very same meaning might have different names in the different systems. And you have to collect them too. Why? Because if I'm an end user, I would like to find a document that is created by my colleague Joe. I don't care the name of the property in the source system. I don't care if it's called created by or author or from. I would like to get the content that is created by him, right? So I have to collect those kind of properties. I have to recognize which ones have the very same meaning, and I have to build up my search solution with collecting them into the very same managed property used as one refiner and display them in the very same way on the search UI. This is very important because the end users will get crazy if you have 5 refiners for author created by owner, editor, etc., right? If they have the very same meaning, I mean business meaning, you should collect them and you should merge them into the very same managed property. It's also important to know the amount of your content. If you have 10,000 of documents, or you do have 10 millions of documents, it makes sense. And you have to involve the owners of the content sources for being able to collect that. So you can estimate, like, we have a couple of hundreds of thousands documents in Documentum. But if you ask the administrator of Documentum, he might have, we have more than 10 millions. And we have 50,000 each day, 50,000 new documents each day. It makes sense. So you have to know that. You also have to know about the user's behavior, especially if you have some search solution today. You have to be able to recognize what they like and what they don't like, what they use, what they don't use, and why. If they are, I don't like the search center because I can't find anything, you have to figure out why they can't find anything there. If they are, all right, I prefer to use this way to this way, you have to figure out why. Also, you have to figure out the pain points. If your users are screaming about not being able to find anything in the file shares, you have to figure out why. And you have to target this pain point as a requirement for your next search project. So if they are complaining about something, you have to figure out what's the real business requirement for that. And there is a very good way for this. We can do it formally. So we can do a lot of meetings. We can do a lot of get-togethers to figure out how our search solution should look like. But in my experience, one of the most useful requirements gathering for search is management by walking around. If you just walk around, if you drink coffee with your colleagues, if you have lunch with your colleagues, if you go to play tennis with them, etc., you can collect a lot of information. It's not spying, but a kind of. But it's a good spying, you know. So they will like it if they are complaining about something, and in a few weeks you are, hey, we solved it. Here you go. It's the solution. So it's a very good way of figuring out. All right, how to implement. So if we have collected those requirements, how to implement them, and how to figure out what we need to do, what kind of systems we do, etc. I have a bad news here. I don't have a silver bullet, so I cannot tell you this is your way. It's not possible. I have one more bad news. Everyone will have different expectations. Everyone means users versus IT versus business. Of course, requirements have to be driven by business, but at this very same time, you will have IT expectations and requirements, like security, scalability, asset maintenance, flexibility, etc. They are very important. Because if the business say, all right, we need to crawl hundreds of millions of documents in 2 hours, IT will be, sorry, we cannot do that. We can, but not in 2 hours. Or we can do that in 2 hours, but not that amount of the content. So sorry, you have to choose 2 hours versus this amount of content. And also your end users will have some expectations, if not requirements. They would like to have nice user interface. They would like to have flexible user interface. I bet I need something else that you need. I would like to get the results coming from different content sources than you do. Why? Because our job is different. I might work for the consultancy, you might work for the marketing, and some other guy might work for the sales. We have different needs. We have different requirements, and we have different expectations. Of course, we would like to have it to be customized with company logo, with the company colors, etc., etc. And I would like to be happy when I use it because it looks like as I wanted and because it works as I wanted. And there might be some other business requirements, some additional business requirements that are maybe not recognized at the very beginning, but I bet sooner or later the business will need some reports on your search. And it's a very good way to improve your search over the time too. So for example, if you create a report for the query terms that are resulted 0 items, and you collect those reports and research them and look over them like every quarter or something like that, you will get a very good picture of your business. Hey, my users are interested in this and that, but they cannot get any results. How to solve it? How to provide them content, the proper content. And you might have the opposite too, so you can say, the last quarter, the most required content was about London. Let's figure out why. This is because there was a conference in London and my colleagues were very, very excited about it. In the next quarter, there is a conference in Paris. So let's expect some buzz around Paris or some other content that is relevant during that period of time. And this is a very common business requirement. This is a very common business case. Then you have to create those kind of reports, and you have to be able to understand those reports. All right, but how to build it up? So I have mentioned different content sources, a lot of different systems. I might have different search engines, etc., etc. So I have to choose how to do this. This is one way. This is a traditional system integration. When I integrate everything with everything, when I tie with everything, so finally I might have a kind of spider web of my systems. If I would like to add a new system, that might be very complex and very complicated at the same time. But instead, I might consider to have a search-driven solution. When I do have the very same systems in my business, but I don't tie them together, I don't integrate them one by one, but I have one additional layer of search. I connect my systems to the search engine, and I provide the applications driven by search. Why this is good? Not because of this is based on search. It's nice, it's clean, but at the same time, if you would like to attach one more system, it's pretty easy because you don't have to change anything. You just have to add that additional system as a new content source. You might have new user interfaces, you might have new properties, but it's much less complex and complicated. Okay, but if we do have different systems and different information and more information, let's talk about security. Usually I say that if we open up search, it's like opening a window. I can look out. I can see very nice things. I can see very useful and nice things, and I need them. But at the same time, it might be dangerous too. So some content might be visible that is not supposed to be visible. Why? Because of search. You might open up things. It's not a security leak. You don't open up anything from security perspective, but you drive the users to the content that they were not aware of before. For example, and this is a very common scenario, unfortunately, it might sound to be funny, but at the very same time, it's unfortunately true for not one, not two, but a lot of companies. Imagine a company, not yours. Of course, not at all. I'm talking about a company far, far away who wanted to create a search solution. We created the content sources, the metadata, the user interface, everything was nice. Everything seemed to be very, very good. And the customer was like, I like it. I'm very happy. I can find everything. Thank you very much. OK, project closed. I'm going home. 2 days later, got a call from the very same customer, screaming, I can find everything. Come on. You were happy with that 2 days ago. What happened? Literally, the problem was they could find everything. Even the content they didn't know about they didn't know about before. For example, they might have a file share that is not published. I mean, nobody knows about it but the management. But they store some very sensitive information on that file share. When they don't have search, people don't know about it. They don't go there. They don't try to look for information there. As soon as they have that file share without proper security settings crawled, people might see it. Why? For example, they have some Excel files with the salaries of the management team in that file share. If someone is looking for the name of a manager, he will be able to find that Excel file because it contains the name of that manager. So people will be like, wow, my manager gets that much of money. I want more too. Right? Hey, he has 3 cars. Why I don't have any of them? Right? So it might be dangerous. So usually what happens in this case, after these 2-3 days, maybe 1 week, we have to close the search at all. They are going back to the content source, fixing the security settings, testing the security on the content source, at least 3 times, maybe more. Then we might crawl the content again. We might open up the search again. But usually this happens for a small set of users for the first time. Why? To be able to test it first and not open up everything to everyone. Right? And this should happen at the very first step and not after this painful experience. And unfortunately, this happens a lot. So the conclusion of this is the more content you have in your search solution, the likelihood of having security issues is getting bigger and bigger. So before you attach any content source to your search solution, or before you open up your search solution for a new group of users, don't forget to do security testing. And don't forget to be sure that your security settings are proper on the content source. Because if I do have search, I can see everything on the search UI that I have permissions to, even if I don't know about that content source, even if I don't know we do have that file share or that database. If I do have search, I might see, and I will see, what I have permissions to. And of course, if I don't have permissions, I won't see that content, so it should be correct. Question?
Do you security trim the results based on the permissions at the source of the data, or is it best to create profiles of people who can search particular areas?
It depends. I know this is not the answer you expect, but usually I suggest to take care of security on the content source. Because if I create a new search user interface, and I can limit that to a set of users or something like that, but there might be new and new search solutions, especially in SharePoint 2013 when you have delegated search administration. So you might have not the control over everything. So there might be other administrators you maybe don't know about, or you don't know what they do. They might open up something that is not supposed to be opened up. So sometimes it's enough to limit, to do limitations on the search center, but I usually don't suggest it. It's easier, I know, and it's faster, but it has some. Can you remember how many of you was working with SharePoint before 2007? Wow, pretty much. In Hungary, we had a university who had an internet site, a public internet site on SharePoint 2003. And I was a student that time. And if you went to the internet site of that university, you could see a lot of things. A lot of new buttons, edit buttons, delete buttons. So, you know, students are curious. No? In Hungary they are. So, we went to the internet site of the university. We were looking for the teachers, and we were like, we don't like this teacher. Let's delete it. You could see the delete button. Click on it. After that, we were asked for credentials, but only after. Of course, the teacher was not deleted. But, you know, curious students can do some nice things, especially if they know SharePoint. We didn't delete any teacher. We just created some vocations. We just made the exam period to be 1 week instead of 6, and those kind of things. Okay, so it was a big security problem that time. Of course, it's solved by now. So that, on one side, that university is not on SharePoint 2003 anymore, but on the other hand, in SharePoint, everything is security trimmed. So if you cannot delete that teacher, you won't see the delete button in SharePoint. If you cannot create a new vocation, you cannot see the new button, etc. And the same with search. If you don't have permission to a result, you won't have that result displayed on the search UI.
So one question I have is, if security trim results and don't show the results, is there situations where you might tell the user we work in research where people might want to know about something. They might not be allowed to see it, but them knowing might be able to, they might be able to go and talk to the right person. Yeah. Is there a standard practice for that?
I wouldn't say it's a standard practice for it.
It's a very small group of users. But it would be
Yeah, what I have seen for this was some custom solution to display, all right, you should, you could see this content, so there is something on this file share or on this content source. We did that several times, but I wouldn't say it's a good practice. It's always, it always depends on the customer requirements, but it's possible with custom development. And the question is why? Because for being able to crawl the content, to index the content, you need a user who has permission to that content anyway. So once you have indexed the content, you might create a new application that is like, all right, let's look for the existence of that content in the index. Don't display anything of it, just yes or no. Does it exist or not? It's possible with custom development. Any other question on security? Okay, so I'm just turning to Search Federation now. It's always a big question, and not always, but it's a very common question. Should I crawl the content or should I federate? But first, let me talk about federation. What's that, and how does it work? Federation is always about using some remote index instead of crawling the content. For example, if you work for IT, you might be interested in results coming from MSDN or TechNet. If you work for a news agency, you might be interested in results coming from CNN and BBC and other news agents. But I bet you don't want to crawl each of them because they are huge, because they are refreshed pretty often, etc., etc. Instead, you would like to consume the results coming from there, right? So if someone just creates a new news, you would like to be able to see that without crawling that content source in every minute. So this is the federation when you don't crawl and don't create the index in your environment, but you use some index somewhere remotely. For example, on this screenshot, you can see some federated results. The first column is coming from Bing. The second is coming from Wikipedia, and the third, and the pictures in the third column are coming from Flickr. I use this one to get some general results for my query. Wikipedia is a knowledge base. You can use Wikipedia. You can use your own wiki solution or anything. The point is to provide some knowledge, some directed knowledge on the topic. And you might be interested in provide some pictures or videos or something like that. But obviously, you don't want to index the whole Wikipedia. And of course, you can do this. But what are the limitations? When should I crawl and when should I federate the results? The very first limitation is in the navigation. First, you cannot merge them together. So you have to have one web part for results coming from the federated location 1, second web part for the federated location 2, third web part for the federated location 3, and one more web part for your results coming from your own index. You cannot merge them. Second, you cannot have refiners for this. So it's a big pain point. But it might be still very useful. So when to federate and when to build your index. You should use federation if you cannot build the index, for example, because the content source is so huge, or you don't want to build that index locally in your environment. SharePoint crawler might be blocked by the remote content source. For example, by that website or your customer site, etc., SharePoint crawler might be simply blocked. You cannot change that. Instead, you should use some federated location that could crawl that content source, and you still will be able to provide the results coming from that content source. Sometimes you don't need the whole set of results. Sometimes you just need a small set of results, like from Wikipedia. If your users are searching for something, you might add your own keywords, your business-specific keywords to narrow down the result set. So you can do this by federation too. If the content changes very often, like in case of news agents, you cannot crawl the CNN or BBC or anything like that enough often to pick up the changes like immediately. So you cannot do that. If you have different security contexts, you should use federation too. For example, you would like to provide the results coming from your customer side, or you have different branch offices with different security trimming. You can use federation in this case too, because you can change the security context with federation. If you have some content sources that are not queried pretty often, like 1 or 2 users are interested in, you don't have to crawl that content, but you still can make them happy with federated location. And yes, in some cases you have hundreds of content sources, and in this case you have to find a balance of which one to federate and which one to crawl. The very first obvious requirement for indexing, you have to be able to do that. So you have to be able you have to be able to build your index because you have the resources to do that. You can get the information from the content source, etc., etc. So you have to be able to do that. Federation requires network connection. Why? Because I'm asking the results from a remote index. If you cannot provide that proper network connection between your end users and the remote location, you cannot use federation because the result set will be empty or mostly empty. The content changes very often, like BBC, CNN, but immediate crawling is not needed. So if you don't need to pick up everything immediately, you might consider crawling. Not BBC and CNN, but some smaller content sources. You might have some content source that you are interested in, that you want to display to your users, but that is not crawled by anything. You have to do that in this case. If you cannot find how to federate them, if it's not published, if it cannot get federated from Bing or any public location, you have to index that. Anyway, I have displayed the federated results coming from Bing. Bing can be federated, but Google cannot be federated. It's good to know. Because Google simply didn't implement the standard that required for federation. This is a big difference. I'm not working for Microsoft, but it's good to know. So it's not a marketing. And search federation requires XML results, either RSS or Atom. If they are not provided, you cannot federate that location either. All right, let's talk about capacity planning.
Just on federating, where do you stand on exchange? Because I've had a lot of messaging teams who've said, we don't want you crawling this, we want you to federate. But then we've had issues with the quality of the content.
Well, to be honest with you, I did mostly crawling on Exchange with custom connectors. I don't have too much experience with federating Exchange, but I can imagine that. So
You've never had any problems with that within impacting the service
the impact is different. Let's talk about it offline after my session, if you don't mind. Okay, so capacity planning in 2 minutes. There are some scaling factors. There are a lot of things. I have mentioned that search is complex. We do have the search engine. We do have the content sources one by one. We have to have network bandwidth, so administration and troubleshooting is pretty complex. And the very same is true for scaling out. So first, content characteristics. How many content I do have, how big those documents are, how they are stored, where they are stored, etc., etc. What kind of content source they are in. They are in a file share, they are in Documentum, they are in a Lotus Notes database. It's very important. What kind of features I do need? Do I want to present them only? Do I want to display them only? Or should I take some activities, some really interactive actions on them, like starting a workflow? If I would like to be able to start a workflow by thousands of users on millions of documents, it requires performance, right? The same with query performance. How many users I have, how often they will use the search. If I have 2 users versus I do have thousands of users who use search all day long, it makes a big difference. How good document freshness I need. Is it enough to crawl the content source once a day? Or I would like to see the changes in 5 minutes. It requires performance. It requires a lot of resources. The better document freshness I want, the more resources I will need. And of course, what kind of availability I want to get. If I would like to get full availability, or I allow 2 days per year to get off, etc., etc. It depends. So there are some principles. Unfortunately, I'm getting out of time. I will upload my presentation, so you will get those principles there. So if you would like to improve the index freshness, what to do then? If you would like to improve the query availability, the crawling or the index availability, etc., etc., there are some principles for that. And also there is a cheat sheet I wanted to show you for the different components of search, like crawling, content processing, or query processing, indexing, etc., etc. What kind of resources they need. For example, search administration in the top row is not does not require, of course, such a lot resources, but content processing does, crawling does, etc., etc. So it's good to know. The conclusion in one sentence is search requires a kind of gardening. You have to plan for it. You have to collect your requirements if you would like to, what content you would like to have. You have to do some implementation planning, but at the same time, you need to work on it over and over. The time it's still time. It's always time to improve it. It's always to do something on it. So you can add some new metadata. You can add some new actions. You can add some new content sources. So it's always, there is always something to improve in search. Thank you very much for coming into my session. I hope I could share some useful information with you. If you do have any question at any time, I'm around tomorrow and on Wednesday too at the conference, or after that or during that. You can find me on email or Twitter or on my blog too. Thank you very much.